Hi and welcome to the Malak Cookery channel. So this is the 8th and final video in our pizza oven build series, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to construct the plinth that the pizza oven sits on, and then building the pizza oven itself on top of the plinth and looking at all of the finishing touches that make this a truly amazing outdoor pizza oven project. So this is the area where I'm going to be doing the base for the pizza oven plinth. So that measures 1 meter by 1.2 meters. I'm going down 150 millimeters, so we're going to be putting 50 millimeters of sub-basin. So I'm going to be using about 2 bags of what's called MOT, which is basically just bags of stone. And then I'm going to do 100 mil of concrete. So to make the concrete, I'm actually using ballast, so bags of ballast, 20 millimeter ballast and standard Portland cement, and the mix is going to be a 4:1 ratio, so 4 parts ballast to 1 part cement. So now that the concrete is set on the base, the next thing to do is obviously build a plinth for the pizza oven. I'm not a bricklayer, so I'm not going to show you how to do the bricklaying side of it. It would be pointless. This is only my second bricklaying job. But what we're actually governed by here is the dimensions of the flagstones we're going to use to top this out with, and they are 900 by 600. So this plinth will be 900 wide by 1.2 meters in depth. So we've now completed the plinth for the pizza oven. The next thing to do is we're going to get the base onto here just to make sure it fits correctly, and then from there I'm going to be cementing the base down and then placing the dome of the pizza oven on top. Right, so we've got the base in position now, perfectly square. What we're going to do is I'm going to scribe around the outside just so I know the exact position of it. We're then going to place it onto a 2 centimeter bed of a sharp sand cement mix. So we're going to use 3 sharp sand to 1 cement. Before we do all that though, what I'm going to do is use a rough piece of sandpaper and just lightly sand the surface, because obviously this is where the pizzas will sit onto, so we need to get that as smooth as possible, and it's easier to do it now than after the dome has actually gone on. So once the base is now in position, cemented, it's all cemented down, the next thing to do is to obviously put the dome structure on top. And in order to cement the dome to the actual base, we're going to be using fire cement. So 1 tub of fire cement from somewhere like Screwfix, this is in the UK, so somewhere like Screwfix, it's about £4 a tub, will be enough to go around the actual perimeter of the base to place the dome structure on top. So that's everything concreted into place now. We're going to leave this to dry until tomorrow, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to construct the entrance brickwork and also the chimney as well. So once everything's set, the next thing we need to do is create the archway, the tunnel archway out of, I'm using block paving simply because it's nice and cheap, it's a lower profile than brick, and it's a really hard surface, nice clean hard surface at the front of the actual pizza oven. So first thing we need to do is we take one of the blocks and we place it so that it's actually, if you look at the inside edge, it's actually 1 centimeter in from the inside edge, because that way once we build this archway around, we'll have this 1 centimeter gap or we'll see the face of the actual dome itself, 1 centimetre round, and what that'll be is it'll be a natural stop for the actual door that we're going to build later. So we place our first brick there. On this side we do exactly the same thing again. So we place the block paving piece there, 1 centimetre in, and then the actual archway, which again is made from block paving, we place the first brick on top, make sure it's nice and flush either sides, and then we mark a position which is the outside edge of the actual dome plus 5 millimeters, so half a centimetre, because there's going to be a very thin mortar bed going around here. So we mark that. We then take the actual block paving down so it's flush with the front side edge, and then we mark on this side. We don't need to add 5 millimeters onto here because there'll be no mortar bed on this side. So we mark that there, and then we draw those lines across, and that's where we end up with this. So what we're going to do with that now is we're going to cut this out with a 4-inch disc cutter, and that's going to be obviously all the way around. With regard to the bottom plinth, just place the blocks roughly in place, and then we'll just take another block paving, place that on, mark there, and then draw a line across, and we'll cut that, and that'll slot into there. So once you've marked all of the bricks for cutting, the next thing to do is obviously cut the bricks. So just a point on actually cutting the block paving with the 4-inch disc cutter. I'm not going to actually show you how to do that because that brings into question then all sorts of health and safety and legal issues regarding YouTube. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to make a series of cuts down the actual block paving. I'm not going to cut this way at all, and then once I've cut down to this line, I'm going to end up with little slithers of block paving. Next thing I'll do is I get a hammer and just gently tap each one, almost like dominoes, to knock them over. Then once they're out, I can just go along with the actual disc cutter just to clean up this surface, because we'll have a cut like that. So this edge and that edge will just need cleaning up, and then obviously I'll move on to the next one. You can do it however you like. One thing I would say is make sure this is locked down when you're cutting. Certainly never try to hold an actual brick while you're cutting it with a disc cutter. If you're not too sure about doing it, get somebody that is experienced on cutting with a disc cutter, or watch some health and safety videos on YouTube, because it is quite a dangerous procedure. So if we just use the pizza oven that we've already built as the illustration to show you this 1 centimetre exposed face on the actual pizza dome itself, which creates this natural stop for the door. So this is actually what it looks like when we've done it. So we've got the block paving, we've got 29 pieces of block paving to create both the arch and also the chimney as well. The cuts that you're going to have to do, obviously we're going to be doing the step cut to get the block paving in place and create this 1 centimetre gap. But you've also got a cut here, so across the front there'll be one cut to do in the floor, and then to send the actual block paving in the arch we've got a slice here and then a slice on this side, and this is actually just one block paving piece which we've cut at an angle. We've cut through at an angle, and I've had to do that with a 9-inch grinder rather than the 4-inch handheld grinder that we're going to use to do the step. With regard to the chimney itself, so we've got cuts to do there, and I'll show you those in a second. Right, so I've cut all of the block paving now. This cutout, I've done 16 of these. 14 will be used for the actual archway, and then 2 will be used to sit at the back of the archway to create a level platform in order to build chimney. This is the one block paving that I've, as I said, cut at a 45-degree angle and then stepped out, and this will create the angle in order to do the archway itself. The other cutouts I've done, so I've done 6 of these, just a U-shaped cutout, and they will be the chimney, form the chimney, 6 of those. In order to hold the block paving in place when we're doing the actual top of the arch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the largest of the 3 plates that we used to create the entrance tunnel when we actually made the dome. I've cut it down the sides so that we get it's just larger, 1 centimetre larger than the inside of the actual entrance dome to the dome itself. And then the height, what I've done is I've cut it across the bottom roughly. Once we get the block paving in place, the floor or the base block paving in place, and that's all level, I can then place a piece of wood. This is just to stabilise this plate, adjust it so that we get that 1 centimetre, mark it across there, and then I'm going to screw it on the other side, and this will sit away from the surface edge of the entrance and act as a good stabiliser for the blocks to actually rest on while the cement sets. So the next thing to do now is to mix the sand and cement. So I'm using standard builder sand, red sand, 3-to-1 mix, 3 sand, 1 Portland cement, and we'll get all this done. Right, so we've got the base in, we've got the sides up to the angles. I've measured and cut this board so that can go in place, and that will be used obviously to support the block paving that goes on the top of the arch. It's important though, before we start building that we point these sides up, because once the board's in place and obviously all the block paving's in place, you're not going to be able to get to that, and you're going to have to leave this structure for at least a couple of days to cure. So it's always best to get this pointing done now, and then it doesn't look a mess later. So the archway is now cured. We've left that for 2 days. Just want to point this out. So these 2 blocks, which were put in place to make a level platform for the chimney, there is quite a deep bed under those to bring that level with the arch. Don't worry about that, because we're now going to be placing a 2 centimetre render over the top of the dome. That's why when we place the dome on top of the base, that's why you've got this 2 centimetre gap here. So that's a guide. So we're going to bring the render out flush to the edge. So the render is going to be sharp sand and cement, 3 sharp sand to 1 cement, and we can quite easily apply this to the dome using our hand. You can use a trowel if you like, but if you're not comfortable with a trowel, you can definitely use your hand, because we've now got a really rough surface here which is solid, so we don't have the same issues that we had with the gym ball. So as I said, 2 centimetre render, 3 sharp sand, 1 cement over the entire dome and the tunnel, bring it up to the actual brick line. So the mate who I'm doing this pizza oven for, one of the things he's asked for is to put one of these temperature gauges in the top of the dome. I've tried to advise him against it. I mean, this was £3 off eBay, so I don't know what he expects it's going to actually indicate, but he just thinks it'll look good. So one thing I'm going to have to do is go on the inside of the dome, drill from the inside out. I don't want to drill this way because I don't want the concrete to shatter on the inside. So drill from the inside out, and then I'm going to leave the drill bit in place while I do the render, the 2 centimetre thick render around the whole of the dome, and then that will be cemented into place before the brick tiles go on. So that's a 2 centimetre render applied. and the fake useless temperature gauge fitted. Each their own, I suppose. So the next thing to do is I'm going to leave this to set for a day, and then tomorrow we're going to apply the brick tiles and the grout. If you're not applying the brick tiles and grout, then the only thing to do really after this is to let it dry, let the dome dry, and then paint the dome with a good quality masonry paint. So the final thing to do now for the pizza oven is to put the brick tiles on, the ones that we made. I'm using Flowmaster fire cement both to adhere the brick tiles to the pizza dome, and I'll also be using it to point in between. And to point with, I'm going to be using just a standard cheap mastic gun. Load that and then run the fire cement in between the actual brick tiles. This is the cheapest one I could find. This is Screwfix at just less than £4.20 a tub for a 2 kilo tub. You're going to need roughly about 4 tubs of this to complete the whole dome. When we get towards the top of the dome, what will happen is the brick tiles will do that, so you'll end up with a triangular shaped in between. So what you need to do is you need to start cutting them almost like a pyramid, just the start of a pyramid shape, so that the joints stay equal. And the best way to cut these is either with a hacksaw, a large hacksaw, or with a Stanley blade. So just score it a few times and then it will snap off. As you can see, we're doing just a standard brick pattern. So horizontal stays the same, but the vertical lines are stepped. If you start to lose that and you're in danger of creating a full line, then you can trim these tiles quite easily so that it steps back a bit onto the next, and you're best doing that around the back of the actual pizza dome itself, so you can't see it on this side. But you'll get the hang of it. Obviously there's quite a bit to do, but they're really easy. The other thing about this fire cement is it's so tacky that as long as you don't put too much on, these brick tiles will stay in place, so there's no need to put spacers in. So this is the brick tiles done. On the top, I've just finished off with like a hexagon piece in the top. So the next thing to do now is just to point up, and again I'm going to use a masking gun to do that. It's a lot neater. This fire cement is quite sticky. I don't want any to get onto the face of the brick tiles if I can help it. So I'm just going to load the gun up first. This is the messy bit. So I'm going to do the verticals first, then obviously the horizontal lines, and then where I need to, I'm just going to have a bowl of water, wet my finger and just go along just to point it in, make sure that it's pushed into all of the gaps. So that's everything done now, it's all been pointed up. I'm going to wait for the fire cement to dry, and then I'm going to give the whole structure a coat of patio and block paving seal just to waterproof everything. So the last part of this pizza oven build is to make the pizza peel, which is a shovel for placing the pizzas into the oven, and also the oven door. So we'll start, I think, with the pizza peel. That's the easiest thing to do. I'll show you what to do with that. So for the pizza peel, you're going to need a baking sheet. So this is a really cheap baking sheet. I got this one from Asda for £1.5p, and it's the one where it's got a high back and then obviously just a shallow front on it. Okay, so that'll form the main part, and you'll also need an old handle off a broom or a mop, something like that. First thing we need to do is to cut a small section off the handle, the broom handle, and that will be for the handle for the door. And then once you've done that, the next thing we need to do is just to cut a slot about 2 to 3 centimeters in, straight down the middle, and that will be where the actual baking sheet slides onto the broom handle. So we've cut off our piece of wood. This is 11 centimeters long, so that's for the door. And now we've cut down the actual shaft of the broom handle, this wide slot, again about 2 to 3 centimeters long, and that, as I said, will go in the center. So the next thing we need to do is to measure the center of the baking sheet, and then with a hammer just go either side and just flatten this down. Don't make the mistake that I made with the original one, and that was to cut either side, because all of the strength in this thin piece of metal is actually in this rib that runs around the outside, and if you cut that, as I found, it becomes far too flexible. Okay, so that's the pizza peel finished. All I've done is I don't know what these are, M3 or M4 bolts through there, just a couple of them, through the slot itself. Just make sure that when you put the bolts through, that the actual shaft of the bolt points up so that the head is underneath, and the reason for that is as you're placing the pizza peel into the oven, what you don't want is exposed bolt shafts scraping the actual pizza oven floor. So that's why the head of the bolt has to be on the underneath. So that's it, really easy to do. Nice pizza peel, £1.5p for that. Next thing we're going to do is I'll show you how to do the actual door to the pizza oven. So for the actual pizza oven door, first thing you'll need obviously is a piece of flat metal that's big enough. This is a shelf off an old barbecue which had rotted away and was being thrown out, so I'll save the 2 shelves knowing that I was going to be making the pizza oven, so I'm going to use that. If you haven't got anything like this, then an old baking tray that's obviously large enough surface area will do. First thing you need to do then is, once you've built your pizza oven, is to make a cardboard template. So I've just obviously placed a big piece of card into the opening of the pizza oven and cut it down until I got the shape that I wanted. I'm going to place that onto the sheet metal, and then with a permanent marker I'm going to mark around the outside edge. Okay, so I've marked that out now. You're not going to be able to see that on the camera, but at least I can see it. Next thing we need to do is cut it out. So we can cut this out with either a large hacksaw, a 4-inch angle grinder with a metal disc. I'm going to be using a Dremel. The only reason I'm using the Dremel is because I bought it a while ago. I've hardly used it, and so I use it at any opportunity to get my money's worth. So I'm going to go around the outside edge with a metal cutting disc, and then once we've done that, I'll show you the next step. Right, so we'll now cut that out with a Dremel. It was fairly easy to do. The next thing I need to do is to go around the edge with a file, just to flatten everything off and then take off the burrs either side, so there's no dangerous edges on the actual plate itself. Now that I've got the edge all nice and safe, we want to put the handle on. So the piece of wood that we cut before, I just sanded that down and put a little bit of stain on it. I've also drilled a pilot hole, just a small pilot hole in either end, so that the screw that we screw in to hold it in place is going to go in nice and straight. So I'm using these cheap brackets. Bought these from Lidl's. I think they're about £1 for 10 brackets. So we need 4. We need 2 of them for the actual handle, like that, and then we need 2 as stabilizers so that the door stays in place when it's inside the oven, it doesn't fall one way or the other. So for the handle, I just want to get the 2 brackets central, so I'll mark a line down the center, place the piece of wood in between, bring them together. Once they're nice and central, just roll it out of the way and then just mark the holes with a pencil and then drill. Now I've got, I think, M3 bolts to go through here, so obviously I'll need a drill bit which is just wide enough for M3 bolts. So once I've drilled those through, we're not going to fix this in place just yet because this is all going to be sprayed black once it's all done. So now that the bracket for the handle is in place, next thing we need to do is to put these stabilizer brackets in place. So again, I'm just going to put this bracket flush with the bottom of the actual door plate itself. Equal spacing on either side, it doesn't really matter where you put them. Equal spacing either side, and then just drill a hole big enough obviously for whatever bolts you're using, and then fasten these into place as well. So that's all the brackets now in place. Now the door will stand up. Next thing I want to do is I'm just going to clean it all up, and then I'm going to spray the entire structure, both the front and the back, with this kind of oven spray. So that's our simple oven door completed, and that signifies the end of the project. So that's the end of video number 8 and the end of this build diary for the pizza oven. I've tried to make it as detailed as possible. I didn't think it would run to 8 videos, but I just wanted to get in as much detail as I possibly could. Please subscribe to the channel as usual, and if you've enjoyed this particular video, hit the like button, and if you've got any questions at all, just put them in the comments below and I'll answer them as quickly as I can. Thank you very much for watching.